My friend Marcus called me last week, panicking. His coworker Greg had just refinanced his mortgage and was about to save almost $400 a month. Marcus has the same house, the same income at $89,000, and 9 years on the job versus Greg's 6. He called every lender he could find. He got declined at all of them. The reason wasn't the market or his income. The reason was a 3-digit number none of his coworkers know about him. His FICO score is 638. He kept me on the phone past midnight while I worked through the numbers on a yellow legal pad. The math on what that 638 had cost him so far wasn't pretty. I'm not talking about the credit card balance or the car payment or the rejected loan applications. The hidden cost. On the house alone, his 638 score versus a 760 score over the 30-year life of his mortgage was going to cost him roughly $156,000 in extra interest. That's $156,000 he'll pay across 30 years because of a number he never thought of as an asset. This is what almost every personal finance video on YouTube gets wrong. They talk about the assets you can see: cash, stocks, a house, a business. The assets that actually move the needle in most people's financial lives are the ones nobody describes as assets at all. Boring stuff that compounds in the background while you're not looking, doing work for you or against you, whether you pay attention or not. I'm going to walk you through 5 of them. None require timing the market or a high income to start. A couple of them you probably already partially own and don't realize it. I'm Tom. This channel is about real personal finance for normal people, not the get-rich-quick version. Just what the math actually does over time. If that's what you want, hit subscribe. Asset 1, a FICO score above 760. Let me start where Marcus is stuck, because his story shows the asset most people don't realize they own the inverse of. Your credit score is an asset. Most people don't think of it that way because there's no balance to look up, but it's working 24 hours a day. It decides your mortgage rate, the interest on your car loan, your insurance premium in most states, whether you can rent the apartment you want, and increasingly whether some employers will even interview you. The invisible asset everyone in your financial life is checking before they price you. Here's the math that should make this real. The average FICO score in America right now is 714, per FICO's Spring 2026 Credit Insights report. That's considered good. What lenders actually price as great starts at 760. At current Freddie Mac PMMS rates in mid-2026, on a $400,000 mortgage, a 760 borrower is looking at a payment around $2,500. A 620 score on the exact same loan pushes the payment to roughly $2,935. Over 30 years, that's about $156,000 of additional interest paid by the lower score borrower for living in the exact same house. Auto loans tell the same story. Super prime borrowers, meaning 781 and above, were getting average new car loan rates around 4.66% in Experian's most recent tier-specific data from Q4 2025. Deep subprime borrowers, below 580, were paying around 16%. On a $30,000 used car loan over 5 years, that gap is roughly $10,000 of additional interest. Insurance premiums in around 45 states factor your credit score in, which can mean another $1,000 to $2,000 a year of difference between a top tier and a bottom tier score. Stack it all over a working lifetime, and a 760 versus a 620 quietly transfers somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 of your money to the financial industry instead of to your retirement account. I'm not going to walk you through how to fix your credit score in this video, because that's a separate topic. What matters is the framing. Your FICO is an asset, not a number. It produces savings every month you use credit and produces opportunity every time you don't. My neighbor David has had an 815 for almost 2 decades. He told me he treats it like a small piece of his net worth he doesn't have to actively manage. He just doesn't break the rules. Pay everything on time, keep utilization low, and never close his oldest cards. The part most people miss is that you can build this asset on any income. A delivery driver making $42,000 a year can have an 800 FICO. A doctor making $400,000 a year can have a 580. Income doesn't determine the score. Behavior does. That makes this one of the only assets on this list that's almost entirely within your control, no matter what you currently earn. Asset 2, a health savings account you actually invest. David has another asset I never would have thought to copy until he explained it to me one weekend. A health savings account. I know the word health makes most people think doctor bills and copays. Push past that. The HSA is the only account in the US tax code that gets a triple tax break. The contributions go in pre-tax, the money grows tax-free while it sits there, and withdrawals come out tax-free if you use them for medical expenses. Nothing else in the system does all three. Not the 401k, the Roth IRA, or a regular brokerage account. The HSA stands alone. Most people with access to one use it like a checking account. They contribute a few $100s, spend it on a doctor visit the same year, and the money never gets a chance to compound. That's not the play. The play is to contribute the maximum each year, invest it inside the HSA in low-cost index funds, pay your current medical expenses out of pocket, and save every receipt. Years or decades later, you can reimburse yourself for those old expenses tax-free at any time. The original money has been compounding the whole time. The 2026 contribution limit is $4,400 for self-only coverage and $8,750 for family coverage, per IRS Revenue Procedure 2025-19. If you're 55 or older, you can add another $1,000 catch-up. To qualify, you have to be enrolled in a high-deductible health plan, which for 2026 means a minimum deductible of $1,700 individual or $3,400 family. So this isn't an option for everyone, but if your employer offers it, the math is staggering. Take a 35-year-old who contributes the family max of $8,750 a year for 30 years and invests it in a total market index fund averaging 7% real return. By age 65, that account holds roughly $830,000, all of it accessible tax-free for healthcare. Per Fidelity's 2025 retiree healthcare cost estimate, a 65-year-old retiring today should expect to spend $172,500 on healthcare across retirement, and a couple should expect about $345,000. The HSA is sized exactly for what's coming. Even if you don't use it all on medical bills, after age 65, the HSA functions like a traditional IRA. Withdrawals for any purpose just get taxed as regular income. It becomes a second 401k you happen to build through the side door. David maxed his family HSA every single year starting in his early 30s. He's never spent a dollar of it on medical bills. He pays his deductibles and copays out of pocket and keeps the receipts in a folder on his phone. Last he told me, that folder has about $54,000 of qualified medical receipts in it, and his HSA balance is around $285,000. The day he wants to, he can pull $54,000 out of that account tax-free as reimbursement for the receipts he's been collecting, and the rest of the money keeps compounding undisturbed. If you don't have access to a high deductible plan, you can't use this. That's fine. But if you do, and you're not investing the HSA, this is the lowest friction asset on this list to start building today. Asset 3, a used car you own outright. This brings me to the asset I get the most pushback on when I bring it up. A car you own outright that you're going to keep driving for at least the next 8 years. Hear me out. The average new car payment in the first quarter of 2026 was $770 a month, per Experian's State of the Automotive Finance Market report. The average used car payment was $531. 19% of all new car loans now carry payments over $1,000 a month, which is a record share. Add full coverage insurance at around $225 a month nationwide, plus gas, maintenance, and registration, and the average American household is spending roughly $1,000 to $1,400 a month on transportation. That's $12,000 to $17,000 a year going into a depreciating asset worth less every single month. Now compare that with Paul, my retired neighbor. He drives a 2003 Subaru Outback. He bought it used in 2011 for around $11,000 and paid it off that same year. He spent maybe $4,000 on maintenance over the last 14 years. Insurance runs him about $80 a month because the car is old and paid for, and he carries liability only. Add gas and the rare repair, and his total transportation cost is around $180 a month. The gap between Paul's number and the average household's number is roughly $1,000 a month. Over 14 years, invested at a 7% real return, that gap compounds to about $285,000. That's the asset, not the car itself. It's the freedom from the payment. The auto industry has done an extraordinary job convincing Americans that a vehicle is a status object, and that a monthly payment is just how cars work. In reality, the second you own a car outright, you've converted a recurring liability into something that does one job exceptionally well. It gets you from where you are to where you need to be. The cheaper version of a Honda or a Toyota does that job approximately as well as a $90,000 SUV. I made this mistake personally. In 2014, I bought a BMW I couldn't afford. $34,000, 6-year loan, $580 a month. David, my neighbor with the dented Honda Accord, walked over to my driveway one weekend and didn't say anything for about a minute. Then he said, "Tom, that car is proof you're good at spending money. My car is proof I'm good at keeping it." I sold the BMW the next month and bought a 3-year-old Camry for $14,000 cash. The Camry is still in my driveway 12 years later. Total cost of ownership, including all maintenance, is under $19,000. What I would have spent on BMW payments and replacement BMWs across the same 12 years is well over $80,000. The version of this asset available to almost everybody is to drive what you've got until it dies, and when it does, buy a 3 to 5-year-old used car in cash or on the shortest small loan you can manage. Toyota Camry, Honda Accord, Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V. These vehicles routinely cross 250,000 miles with normal maintenance. The moment you own one outright, you've unlocked anywhere from $500 to $1,200 a month of margin most American families don't have. Asset 4. A Roth IRA past its 5-year clock. There's an account that quietly does more for most people's retirement than any single investment decision they make. And most people under 40 either haven't opened it or aren't actually using it. A Roth IRA. The mechanics are simple. You put money in that you've already paid taxes on. It grows tax-free for as long as it sits there. When you pull it out in retirement, it comes out tax-free. Not tax-deferred, tax-free. The clock to remember is this. Starting from your very first contribution, 5 years have to pass before earnings can come out tax-free. Once you're past that 5-year mark, and at least 59.5, every dollar of growth in the account is yours. No tax bill ever again. The IRS gets nothing. The 2026 contribution limit is $7,500. If you're 50 or older, you can add $1,100 catch-up for a total of $8,600. There's an income phase-out. Full contributions cut off above $153,000 for single filers and $242,000 for joint filers in 2026, with the contribution phasing out completely by $168,000 single and $252,000 joint. Below those numbers, the contribution is straightforward. Here's the part most people don't internalize about why this asset matters more than it looks. Take someone who contributes $7,500 a year for 30 years inside a Roth, invested in a total market index fund averaging 7% real return. At the end, the account holds roughly $710,000. If those same dollars had been invested in a regular taxable brokerage account, paying capital gains and dividend taxes along the way and on the way out, the same person would realistically end up with around $570,000 after taxes. That wrapper is worth roughly $140,000 of extra wealth over a working lifetime for putting the exact same dollars into the exact same investments. The wrapper does the work, not the investment. About the 5-year clock. It starts the year you make your first Roth contribution, not the year you decide to take Roth seriously. If you open a Roth at 30 and put in $50, that account hits its 5-year mark when you're 35, whether you put another dollar in or not. If you wait until 45 to open it because you finally feel ready, you're 50 before the clock matures. Opening it earlier rather than later, even with no real money in it, is worth potentially tens of thousands of dollars of future flexibility because the clock is running in the background. There's a regular at my Saturday farmers market named Linda. I've talked about her on this channel before. She started her career at 24 as an entry-level administrative assistant earning $32,000 a year. The year she turned 25, Linda opened a Roth IRA, set up a $200 automatic monthly contribution that grew with her salary, and never stopped. By the time she retired at 64, the account held about $1.05 million. None of the years felt special. Linda didn't pick winning stocks or time the market. She had the asset open and feeding for 40 years inside a tax-free wrapper, and the wrapper did the work. Asset 5, a second income stream. Last one, and it's the asset almost nobody under 50 has actually built, even though it's the one that most quickly changes your financial life once you have it. A second income stream that brings in at least $500 a month and doesn't depend on your day job. I want to be careful with this one. The YouTube version of side hustle content has gotten ridiculous. Nobody needs to start a dropshipping empire. Nobody has to build a content business from scratch unless they want to. What I'm talking about is more boring and more achievable. There are two versions of this asset. The market-powered version is income that comes from money you already invested. The S&P 500 by itself is a bad fit for this job in 2026 because the dividend yield on the broad index is around 1% right now, the lowest level since the 1800s. The better fit is a dividend-focused index fund like SCHD or VYM, which currently yields around 3.5%. A $150,000 position in something like SCHD throws off about $5,250 a year in dividends, or roughly $440 a month, while you do nothing. A $300,000 position throws off about $10,500 a year, or $875 a month, of cash you didn't have to work for that month. Small at first, growing as the position grows. The other version is human-powered, a skill you have that you can charge for outside of work. Maybe that's a few hours of bookkeeping for a small business on weekends, podcast editing on weeknights, tutoring high school math on Wednesdays, or driving for a delivery app 8 hours on a Saturday. Whatever you're already good enough at to charge money for. The bar isn't $5,000 a month, it's $500. $500 a month invested at a 7% real return for 30 years becomes roughly $610,000 by itself. What this asset really does isn't the dollars, it's what it does to your psychology. The day you have any income that isn't from your boss, the relationship between you and your job changes. You stop tolerating things you would otherwise tolerate. You become harder to scare. The reason most people are stuck in jobs they actively dislike is that they have exactly one stream of income, and losing it would be catastrophic. 2 streams isn't twice as good. It's exponentially better, because the second one removes the catastrophe from the equation. Paul, before he retired, had 3 streams for the last 15 years of his career. His state government salary, about $400 a month in dividends from his brokerage, and about $600 a month from tutoring high school physics students 2 evenings a week, which he genuinely enjoyed. The dividends and the tutoring together were roughly $1,000 a month, which doesn't sound life-changing, but it covered everything Paul actually spent outside his mortgage. His salary became excess savings. When you have a second stream of any size, you change which dollars you save and which dollars you spend. The math shifts from defensive to offensive overnight. The assets that build a real financial life are mostly boring. They don't show up on the YouTube thumbnail you'll click on this week. They're not exciting and they won't get you wealthy in 3 years. What they will do, given 10 or 15 or 20 years, is quietly change everything in the background while you're busy living your life. Marcus is going to spend the next 2 years rebuilding his FICO from 638 towards 720. By the time he can refinance, mortgage rates may be lower, but more importantly, his number will be higher, and the math finally starts moving in his direction instead of away from him. That $156,000 he was bleeding starts to come back. The asset he didn't know he had begins doing the work it was supposed to be doing all along. If you don't have any of these yet, pick one. Just one. Pull your credit report this weekend, open an HSA at your next enrollment window, sell the car you're underwater on, open a Roth this week with $50, or start the side income tomorrow. The decision to start any of them today is worth more than perfecting your strategy for the next 6 months. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 you already own and which one you're starting this month. I read every comment. I'll see you in the next one.